Hey guys, I thought I might let you in on one of my more recent transitions. It's quite a big one for me, and I'm still feeling the effects of the decision. It's all good vibes, good things, but it was hard. And what I'm speaking specifically about is my moving from the Gulf Coast of Texas to upstate New York in 2022. That story really starts in 2014 on the heels of sort of a devastating circumstance. My mother passed away of cervical cancer in 2014. She had only been diagnosed with the cancer about a year prior, so it was a tough, emotional year. Anyone who's lost a loved one to cancer, or just in general, knows that it's hard, and there are good and bad days around it. You feel strong one day and weak others, and it just sort of lasts for a while. It's an indefinite time, the grief process. But the byproduct, or one of the byproducts of Mom passing away, is that I was her heir to all the property that she had, which included real property, real estate. That real estate included 2 houses and a barn on 1.25 acres in a small town outside Houston. I was there for the writing of her will, so I knew exactly what I would inherit, which was pretty much everything she had. She had a little bit of cash too to pay her taxes and insurance. I had no experience being a homeowner. So while I was aware of what I would receive upon her death, I had no idea what was headed for me. I was not prepared to be a full-blown homeowner and eventual landlord. So when she passed away, she was living in one of the 2 homes, and I went over and cleaned that out. You know, if you've lost a loved one, how difficult that is as well. Took some time, and I moved from the house that I was renting to her house that she lived in. Kind of started anew as the person who is on all the documents regarding this property, learning how to change stuff over as a result of a death, going to probate court, all that stuff. I was not ready for any of that. But I put my head down and I did the business around my mother's death. And as someone who was 4 years sober at the time, I felt like I performed very well. I felt very grown up. I was about 36, 37 when all of that happened. Still a little bit of a late bloomer in the process, but I wholeheartly think anyone who is interested in buying a home should go through it, see what it's like. It's not a lot of fun, but it's sort of a rite of passage. I remember when I went to the title company to sign for, to put my name on all of that property. It was just me. It was a giant table, this big, long conference table, real shiny, smelled like pledge. And, I'm about to sign for all this money for 30 years and a whole lot of commitments. I had no idea. I didn't really understand the full picture at the time of signing, but I remember, signing my name to all the closing documents, and I went out to my car and I cried. I just cried because the weight of what was given me, the years that it took for her to just have something to give me in death. My mom was alcoholic too. And for her to go from some really full-blown issues around her illness to in recovery and someone who's been able to maintain, all of that property on a shoestring budget. She didn't have much of an income. She let me off the hook in that she said it was okay to sell, it was okay to stay, whatever you want to do, it's yours. So I was aware of that, but knowing is one thing. When your parent is gone and can't guide you to the next step and it's really all on you, you feel the heavy, and I felt the heavy, and so I did have to have a nice little cry in the car. It was something else. But when I picked myself back up from the cry, I kind of went on to next steps. So the home that was in disrepair, I started poking around it, finding out what needed to be done in there. And my boyfriend at the time had discovered a leak behind the wall in the kitchen. So I thought, okay, let's attack that issue. After we kind of did a visual appraisal of what was going on in the house, find that leak. Okay, that's a good place to start. I had a small, like a shoestring budget of cash. I thought, okay, I think I can handle this. That leak behind the sink ended up being a $50,000 whole home renovation. Welcome to home ownership, right? I was like, oh my God. You talk about not being prepared. Every decision, every process, brand new. Everything cost at least $1,000. You've got to deal with contractors that specifically want to screw you over because you're a woman holding the checkbook. There was levels of this that I was not prepared for. We redid the kitchen, including brand new cabinets. A friend of mine did the cabinets. We had the whole house rewired. I put in a new HVAC system. I repainted the interior. He did the floors in the kitchen. I had the original oak floors redone and restored. My brother was nice enough to help me with that. And it was just a lot. All new ceiling fans, a new patio door. It was the real deal when I just wanted to fix the leak behind the kitchen. There was demo involved in it. It was a lot. It took about a year and a half, maybe 14 months from start to finish. We picked up the work that we could do ourselves in between contractors. And it was a lot. It was very stressful. I stressed over every decision because all I could think of, if this is the wrong color, if this is the wrong material, this is going to last the life of the loan. That's not true. People change up their house all the time. But this process is not something I wanted to do again. I don't want to be here again, in this place. So when the house was move-in ready, I moved from the smaller of the two homes into the larger one, and I rented the smaller one. That was my mom's favorite house. I contacted a real estate agent who found me a renter, and he was great. He was a winner, and I appreciate him taking care of the house and the length of his stay. He was a very considerate man. What happened over time, however, is I never felt really secure in my home ownership. It wasn't that I couldn't handle being a homeowner. It occurred to me that I didn't want to be a homeowner anymore. I'm living on the Gulf Coast of Texas, south of Houston. So that means in the summer, which lasts about 8 or 9 months, you need to mow every week. Why do you mow every week? Because if you don't, it's twice as hard the next week, and it's harder on your machines, and you need to take care of your yard tools. I need to spray twice a month the yard for mosquitoes because the mosquitoes are a real deal down there. There was always something to do to maintain. And I never felt like the pool of money that I had for maintenance, for repairs, was large enough. It kind of kept me up at night that I didn't have enough money. The rent I collected went to go to pay that $50,000 worth of debt. I was not balling out of control, you guys. Private landlords are not balling out of control. Just remember that. Not all of them, anyway. It played on my psyche in that I never really felt comfortable that I had enough money in case of a hurricane or some other catastrophic event. One of the beautiful trees, my property was lined with oak trees that were mature. Those oak trees needed to be trimmed every 2 years. That's at least $1,000, probably $1,500. I had 2 AC units to maintain. It never ends. I got to pressure wash the houses because those beautiful trees drop pollen and dirty the brick. Roots were coming up through my driveway, making it bumpy. Anything you could think of. Oh, and then of course the city that I lived in wanted to make money off me as a landlord. They wanted me to pay additional monies annually for the privilege of renting my own property. So it was a lot. And what happened was my homes, that beautiful family property on a nice shaded oak tree lot that held so many memories. I moved in there in 1992. I was there for 30 years off and on, through high school, through tough times in my life, Mom would provide me a place to stay, not for free, because I didn't have that kind of mom. I'd been on and off that property for 30 years. My name, it has shifted through our family, and my name is on it. I'm up. And what happened was this beautiful thing had turned into something that owned me. I no longer owned these homes. They owned me. They owned every piece of my psyche. When I took on my tenant, I felt an ethical and moral obligation to always be considerate in worst case scenarios. What can I do to provide for him? And it's on me to make sure that his living conditions are always very suitable. And so I always promptly responded to him. So I'm having to think for myself. I'm having to think for him. And it just took up too much brain space for me. And in recounting this story, I hate that something beautiful ended up so unbearable for me, but I am a single child-free person who does not entertain. I have family, yes, and that includes kiddos in my life, my nieces and nephews. I have grown-up adult friends. I just never had anyone over to the house. All my grown-up friends we can barely schedule a night out, right? A night out, a few hours, let alone like preparing for a barbecue and be in that house. I was never that house in my friend group, and I'm not mad at it. It's just that I had too much house. It was only 2 bedrooms, but it was too much house for one person with no kiddos. It was nice. It was a modest, that these homes were built in the 60s, so they were not brand new, but they're clean and well maintained. I just wasn't doing anything with all that extra land behind my house. I didn't have horses anymore. In 2019, so if you're listening to this episode after the Singledom episode, well, part of that first year of Singledom was learning that I like to get on airplanes and see other communities in the United States. And as a birthday present to myself, I make my birthday a priority every year. I take off work and I visit a new place. And I chose to visit in 2019 Maine. I had never been to the state of Maine. When I was mulling where to go, I thought, where do I want to go? Where have I never been? In my head, I said, you know what? I have never eaten fresh Maine lobster. I'm going to Maine. I'm going to eat some lobster. And hot damn if I didn't. I flew into Portland and drove up to Bangor, spent the night there. For Stephen King fans out there, a lot of books written in Bangor. And it's very eerie in Bangor. If you know that Stephen King has done some writing in and about Bangor, Maine, it's kind of creeptastic there, but in a truly awesome way. Maine is so stately. The architecture there, it's really a sight to see. The whole state that I saw, the parts that I saw were very interesting. History attached to Maine and the beautiful landscape. I visited Bar Harbor, Acadia National Park, and you talk about taking your breath away. Seeing the boats in the marina there and just the craggy coastline of the Atlantic. I'd never seen that before. I had just a bang-up time there, driving up and down the coast, visited Portland, Old Orchard Beach. There are parts I didn't get to see, and I'm definitely going back. And I was so touched at how salt of the earth, or the people are in Maine. They're very generous, very kind. I think Northeasterners as a collective aren't overly friendly. They're not nosy, but they're definitely kind. I contacted a real estate agent when I got home. First, I was so taken with Maine, I was going to buy. I was going to take on some more debt and buy. And I don't know how I got this agent's number. I really don't even remember. I gave her my budget and I said, yeah, I want to do it. She worked at showing me some properties, and as time went on, the reality of being a homeowner, having been rooted in my job for many a year, and, the fact that I've got a tenant depending on me, all the reality post-vacation started sinking in, and I finally disengaged with her. She was very friendly. I don't remember her name, but she was great to work with. So that was like the fall, let's say September, October of 2019, when I finally stopped dealing with Maine. But I tell you what, the desire to relocate never really left me. I decided in fall of 2021, I had never seen a New England fall, and I wanted to come up to the Northeast. So I planned a trip the second week of October 2021. I planned a trip in which I flew into Albany, New York, spent a couple of nights in Lake George, a couple of nights in southern Vermont, a couple of nights in northern New Hampshire, and a couple of nights in northern Vermont. And I flew back out of Albany. And I tell you what, I knew what I was walking into. Vermont was sort of the gem of the vacation. I was looking forward most to Vermont. But that whole week I spent was magical. That sounds a little trite, but it truly was dazzling. I mean, this place gets to be on fire in the fall. It is a sight to see. I was full on gawk mode. My name is Autumn, right? And I'd never seen a New England fall. And it lives up, in real life, it lives up to the pictures online. All that beautiful photography. That's exactly what it looks like, but it looks even cooler because you can see it and you can touch it and you can smell it and you can feel it in the air. Fall is awesome. I love it. I'm its namesake, so it's really nice to have been up close and personal with a New England fall. Gosh, I was so blessed. And Vermont did not disappoint. It had my heart. Just like Maine had my heart, Vermont was in my soul. Today, it's still one of my favorite places on earth. Not that I've ever really even left the country, but Vermont has my soul. I belong here. The Northeast has accepted me and I have accepted it. We are one. And it all started with this fall trip. So I'm in northern New Hampshire in a city called North Conway. That is one of the places to be. If you want to be here in the fall, Lincoln, New Hampshire, North Conway, it's a good place. There's, notches to drive through and all kinds of great hiking and of course the leaves and stuff. And the people in New Hampshire are really cool. They take their independence seriously. And it's very nice to be amongst people who just don't, whatever your thing is, have it. They're just not that nosy there. I really enjoy it. They're not trying to tell you how to live in New Hampshire. It's amazing. One of the activities I had planned for myself in New Hampshire was the Kankamagus Highway. That is a scenic byway, and I highly recommend it. It's about 30 miles long. I was just going to go point to point to kind of experience it. There's some overlooks there and that are really fascinating. You can see all the beautiful, tremendous views of the White Mountains. So I'd just gotten back into my car at an overlook and, I start back down the Kank and completely unprompted, my consciousness says to itself, why are you not living the life you want to live? And then my consciousness replied back, because I play it safe. And so the response to that was, your mother would want you to be happy. And then the conversation within my consciousness stopped there. And so I'm asking myself, where did that come from? I'm vibing. I've got my tunes on. It's beautiful outside. Everybody's happy. Why would I go there? Why would I want to add something heavy to this light feeling? And I've come to understand now that it's because my heart was so full and open. I was ready to receive a message like that because it changed my life. My heart and head speaking to itself, and then my feet committing to some action, changed my life. What happened after that was I cried. I cry a lot. I've found that ever since I've moved, I've cried a lot more just because I'm so honestly and earnestly fulfilled that I have room for it now. Anyway, I get back to my Airbnb, which was fabulous. It was a tiny little 400 square foot shoebox. It had everything I needed in it. It was a little walk up, little loft, had its own entrance, and it was so cutely appointed. Had, bed, a little table, a TV, couch, a stand-up shower, a little dorm fridge, and a stove oven. Everything I needed. Cute, cute, cute. I got my journal out and I started writing about that experience, trying to mull over why that was. I didn't come up with any answers. The next day, I was headed to Burlington, and I continued on with my trip. I didn't really come up with any answers. I just tried to digest it as best I could, process it as much as I could. There were no definitives at the time. So I headed next to Burlington, Vermont, and that was amazing. I met a expat there. He's a proprietor, a really cool proprietor of a business on Church Street there. And that is such a great market. I had a fabulous time in Burlington. I love the vibe there too. It's so youthful. It's so crunchy. Vermont is everything you think it's going to be. It really is. It's such a dear place to me. And I'll tell you, coming up from the south, from Albany into Vermont, where you cross Lake Champlain, I am telling you, those farms are so green parts of the year, and other times they're so golden. It makes me think that this is what the afterlife feels like. Like you just lay down in these fields and you can rest. And that is such an amazing, as someone who's given herself a lot of tumult and some tumult that has been thrust upon her, it's nice to know that I can go visit a place that gives me that much peace and serenity. I'm ready to accept that in my heart now. So after my fab time in Burlington, I flew out of Albany and headed back down to Texas. And I tell you, I don't remember the specific sequence of events, but by December, I had thoroughly researched moving to New York, to Albany specifically. My company has a campus in one of the communities surrounding Albany. It's a short drive for me. As a single woman doing life on her own, my primary focus is money. How can I support my decision to travel, or in this case, support my decision to relocate? So I did some hard crunching on numbers. It costs more to live here. What I get in trade, the quality of life that I get in trade for living in New York is way worth everything I had to do to get to this place, physically and emotionally. I looked at weather, culture, temperatures, hobbies, what is there to do, proximity to other things. Weather was a big one. Obviously, coming from the south, I wanted to make sure that I would be fully prepared for the amount of snow and ice that is here in the Northeast in winter. So I prepared really for a Vermont winter. My first winter in Albany was really not that bad. I live in downtown, and so it's a little bit different than the surrounding or the suburbs and things like that. Albany does a really good job. The infrastructure is ready to take care of snow and ice. So it was not that big of a deal, especially when you mentally prepared for a Vermont rural winter. This was nothing at all. I could definitely handle it. And the temps I was prepared for. I have the right gear, so it was no big deal. Anyway, so I did my crunching, and then my next move, once I realized it was doable, my next move was to ask my boss if I could move campuses. He's like, go for it. Boy, I tell you, my house was on the market January 15th, 2022. It was for real. Because when you know, friends, I had the notion to relocate. Again, I've lived in other places. I was much younger, but I was post 40. When I made this move, I was 44 years old. And I knew when I was 42 years old, when I went to Maine, that there was something in me that desired a huge change like this, and it never went away. Selling a house sucks as much as buying a house. There are plenty of things people do not tell you about the house selling process. That was a nightmare. That was my personal nightmare. Given the fact that I was ready to relinquish my homeowner status and become an apartment dweller again, something I have not been in, I think, 20 years at that point. And I have no desire. It's because of the whole rigmarole involved in home ownership, start to finish. I have no desire to be a homeowner at present again. But I tell you, that closing process really put the nail in the coffin for that too. The first closing date was about mid-March. That was a tumultuous, very emotional time. My brother helped me through the process. He's much more seasoned in that stuff than I am. This is my first foray into the cottage industry that is real estate. I tell you what, there's a lot of hands out when it comes to home buying too. So anyway, and home selling, just be cognizant of it. There's a lot more to it than your mortgage payment, folks, if you don't own a house. It's more than just a down payment and a mortgage payment. There's a lot involved with it. Anywho, so my brother helped me out and he listened to a lot of cussing. He guided me to ask the right questions of the right people and things like that. He was extremely helpful. My sister-in-law as well. They're way more seasoned in this. Now, in that 2 months, I knew that I needed to go look for a place to live. And so I did that in February of 2022. So right midway, I came up to Albany for a week, and I had researched some places online and I went to visit them, and some were not quite as advertised. Most of them were. And I realized that all of these apartments that I had selected were in the burbs. They were next to giant retail spaces, very slick, big box complexes, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted to get away from everything being very contrived and no soul and things like that. So the last place that I looked at was a suggestion from a friend. It was right in downtown. I am shown the apartment that I now live in, and I said, this is it. It's a little shoebox. It's a size 12 shoebox, much like the one in New Hampshire, which was probably a size 8 shoebox. This one's a size 12 shoebox. It's a little less than 700 square feet, has a huge window, and I'm close to happenings. I'm close to entertainment and food. I can walk. I love the fact that I can walk my community. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling coming from the sticks to living in an apartment community where, there's different types of noises, different types of personalities, different schedules, dogs. I'm living closer to people. It's a completely different experience. That's what I wanted. I specifically chose a completely different experience because it's what I needed to do. I realized that, I'm in my 40s, but I always want to be discovering something new. If I'm going to change something, go whole hog. You know what I mean? I did a 180 and I love it. I still love it a year plus into it. My property manager was very understanding about the need for me to be flexible on my lease start date, which was a great selling feature of that experience, that they were very understanding. I was like, look, I'm coming from out of state. My buyers are coming from California, and everything is contingent upon this, that, and the other. If I update you, will you work with me? And they did. When I left my recon trip, the next thing I did was put a deposit down on the apartment and sign what became a tentative lease agreement for March. My first closing date came and went, did not close. It's just the process. There are papers and amendments and, negotiations and stuff. But finally, on March 25th, my closing date came. I had liquidated all the insides of my house, and boy, howdy, that was tough. Just getting rid of, furniture and this, that, and the other. I was putting stuff out to the street. I'd forgone trying to collect money for it. I really just needed the house cleaned out. So I loaded my Toyota Camry that I love so much, my favorite car in my whole life, loaded that Camry down. I took a last look at the life that my stepdad built, my mother maintained, and I have now sold, and I headed to the title company to close on this. It was kind of an eerie feeling, even recounting that experience now. It brings up a lot of emotion because I know I can still put my mind exactly where it was on that day. It felt initially like I was gambling on this new life. I know now that I was just simply betting on myself. I believed in my guiding light. I believed in the forces that guided me to make this decision that was right for me. That last look was an acknowledgement of the hard work it took to get me to that place, of my hard work, my stepdad's hard work, my mom's hard work. I turned away from it and I faced a new life. So I headed to the title company. I signed away all the security that my mom ever had to give me, I got in my car and I was in Little Rock, Arkansas that night. And I kept driving until I was in Albany, New York. My life changed when I began to believe in myself and advocate for those internal movements that are hard to describe to people. I have a good friend. He's such a dear friend, very safe guy, platonic guy friend of mine. He kept asking me, why are you moving to New York? Why are you moving to New York? And I hope he hears this and he understands, because it was hard leaving my friends behind. I have missed them dearly since I've been here. My family has plans to relocate themselves at a later date and to a place that has their heart. So I'm definitely cheering that on. And I look forward to seeing them again soon. I know they're going to be okay. My friends are going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. It's just the next step. And I think sometimes what has caught me up in staying in unfulfilling situations is my deep desire for some sort of permanence. I still get caught up in emotion retelling that story because all I ever wanted was someone to stay. And what happened was I left. There's a huge shift inside me where I don't need to simply stay for the sake of staying. I want to live a rich, full life. I don't know what that looks like still. I still don't know what a rich, full life looks like. But I know that advocating for myself, being assertive, and stating my wants, needs, and desires is always going to pay off for me. My life in Albany in the last year, 14 months, has been amazing. Much like I stated in my singlehood episode, I just showed up. I have done everything. My first year was a circus of fun stuff. I did fun shit all the damn time, and it was amazing. And the people here have welcomed me with open arms. They have been so gracious and kind, and they've been instructive and helpful and just so great. Like, I'm building these bonds inside the community, and which is kind of weird in and of itself, because when I got here, I was like, I'm moving every 2 years because I don't want to get in that stuck state where I've stayed too long in relationships or in an apartment or at a job. I'm still dealing with that right now. I had my mind made up that I'm moving every 2 years. I'm just going to go explore. And what happened was I started to get to know people, and I really liked them. I wouldn't say that we're all hardcore friends, but I have so many friendly acquaintances. And when I pop up in places, people know my name. And it's because I have made a concerted effort to make myself known in the community, because it is so easy to be off in my own world. I have met some of the most interesting, kind, caring people here in Albany. It has been such a wonderful, rewarding experience making that change. It took a lot of upward momentum. It felt like I was really pushing that boulder uphill because there were so many logistical items to tackle around relocation. If I were moving from apartment to apartment, the story would be slightly different. But I felt like the universe put me to task on the strength required to make that commitment. But I believe that there are certain elements of decision making where you have outs. I had several outs. I could have stopped the process. If it was too painful, I could have stopped the process on the selling of my home. I put my head down, my shoulders into it, and I said, this is what I want. I know darn well if it was not the right thing, I would not be sitting here in my cute little apartment in Albany. If it wasn't supposed to be, it wouldn't be. That is a huge takeaway in my life. But the fact that I'm here and I'm thriving and I'm still excited and I'm still meeting new people and doing new things and staying curious tells me that that was the exact right thing to do. It just takes a really long time to get comfortable with that decision. It took 3 years. It took 3 years for an idea to come to fruition. So if you're hanging on to something like that, if there's a big move you want to make, I fully understand the mental dragging of the feet. But there will be a time when it's on you and you need to make a decision. That's what happened for me. I am so grateful to have told this story. There are so many people who have asked me the question about why New York, how did you get here, where did you come from, where did you go, Kanajo type stuff. It's a relief, it's a happy relief for me to put this episode out. So hopefully it maybe answers those questions. I'm always going to advise, my unsolicited advice is to bet on yourself and see what happens. Thanks for listening. I can't wait to talk again.